should we go to our next topic, which is programmatic. And we're back here with Nils and James, and we're talking about how programmatic consolidates, but quietly blossoms. This is one of the topics we're covering under Trends and Predictions 2023. So there has been several different major trends in the programmatic field for the past year or so. One of them is that a lot of the small players are getting consolidated. They're either getting bought or are having being bankrupt, really, all of them. And then we also have this programmatic growth that is horizontal, so it covers new markets which have been kind of underdeveloped within the past. Instead of growing more and more when it comes to a share of market in developed markets like the United States. And we also have new ad formats that are on the rise recently, mostly TV, audio as well. There are some enthusiasts working on it a bit more. So, James, do you want to open up with you this time, or should Nils go?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to me, this just looks like the market maturing. I know, everybody's concerned about consolidation, and stuff, and but I think that this is kind of natural. It just, and I've seen it in other industries and other parts of the tech world that, you get to this place where the product has stabilized. We've had header bidding and sort of, auction related markets for a while now. And I think you're just looking at, a marketplace that is maturing. And I think long term, this is probably good. You're going to get some search, path optimization. You're going to get supply path optimization. You're going to get some, some fewer players. Maybe a few bigger, you'll have some consolidation into bigger ones, but also, some are going to shift. And it just, I'm not too worried about it. The overall market's going to continue to grow. I think, yes, there are new ad formats, CTV and as you say and such, but even those, it just seems like we've kind of got this, this paradigm that we work in with programmatic now that is pretty successful, and now we're just going to see the market mature.
What will be the growth pains of the patch, Nils?
The growing pains of a market consolidation,
of the market maturing in general.
I mean, would you agree that in one way, let's with my point is this just the market maturing, or is this havoc?
So, I mean, if you look at the entire ecosystem, there are a lot of players involved in it that don't really add value anywhere close to the amount of revenue they have to take out to pay salaries and other parts to basically operate those companies. So this is definitely something where we are stepping a bit more into like efficiency by less parties being involved in the majority of the market as it is. Of course, it is also like a downside in terms of like innovation and how much is possible. But at the same side, many of these kind of players are not really adding anything like that is that really makes a big difference to the market in terms of innovation. Yeah, besides that, there's the potential hope that, of course, it cleans up the ecosystem a bit. But at the same time, there will always remain some small players that will still be able to make it work within the ecosystem. So yeah, I'm kind of curious how it will turn out in the end. If it will just be like a consolidation as we had already happened in a few times in the past in this kind of industry, where a bunch of DSPs got wiped out, a bunch of SSPs got wiped out before. If it will be the same, and then you have a few small new companies popping up, creating a bit of buzz, getting some market share, and then usually dying down relatively like slowly again from the market. Yeah, I don't know what will happen, but one thing I guess we can see happening right now quite aggressively is the move of in-banner video into the normal display market. So in the past, when we would look at like what are like your top performing partners in an header bidding stack, and you would work with a majority of them, you would usually still see something like Index, AppNexus, Rubicon, and so on being like the top partners. But over the last year or two, there has this shift been happening where they are like SSPs directly focused purely on like bringing video into banner placements and only doing that. We have been able to capitalize on that quite well, generating significantly higher impact of revenue. But of course also being on the downside in terms of like network bandwidth, total amount of requests happening within the ecosystem and so on. Yeah. So
do you think
it's gonna?
Do you think that this is also bringing some issues to the market, or do you believe it's just ads that are better and users engage with them more?
Like, I don't know any data about that if those ads are actually more effective in the end. Of course, as a user, when you have to load a video within a browser, the computation that needs to happen, the processing slows down everything a bit. It hits like the battery lifetime and everything. So that is definitely like a negative drawback. And a lot of publishers are also not working with these kind of SSPs yet. So they are staying away from it. But the ones that do, they see significant uplift by working with those partners, usually. But of course, it comes to some kind of negative side on the user experience. But it also kind of shows us that like the big SSPs that have been around for a very long time, have a very good market position, and are standing there solid, are kind of missing out on that opportunity. Anywhere from all the big ones to integrate through Prebid, but also on a good kind of side from Google and other ones, they're just not capitalizing on this kind of market. They are fully focused on CTV, and these few new ones popping up, they kind of like take a bit of a different approach on bringing that kind of stuff to the desktop and mobile world too.
Okay, so in the past year or so, we've seen some consolidation happening. We've seen like Sortable going to Freestar. We've seen the Wolf Group taking several small players in place. I'm not sure if this happened last year, but we also saw other types of companies, such as someone buying Popper, as an example. So an SSP buying a Whopper company. And I guess many of the SSPs now tend to try and offer more than just access to demand. So they already have the connections, they already have the salespeople, they already have the infrastructure to promote and add new offerings on the table. What do you think, James? Are we missing something when it comes to this, or are there any other companies that we should mention? Probably we should also mention that Yahoo has said that they're going to close their SSP business. Do you have any idea why would they do that? Is it not a profitable business?
I assume that they just don't see it as, as profitable. If it was doing well, they wouldn't shut it down. Maybe they see it as like outside their core competency. But if that was the case and it was still profitable, you'd think they'd try and sell it off, right? I don't know. I mean, again, I think that the programmatic world is strong. My take, on the programmatic world is that sure, it's not perfect, and I think something Nils brushed over earlier is very true, right? Like we do need to really continue to focus on cleaning up the market. There used to be a lot of focus on that in the past. I think that you see this collapsing, like you said, of SSPs and DSPs beginning to add functionality that used to be, previously, sort of in the other one's shop or the other one's, that makes total sense to me. But the thing that really, the thing that really makes the market as a whole better is cleaning up the ad fraud and getting the the pipes as clean and as efficient as possible. Because I think programmatic is basically strong. I mean, somebody tells me that, they've got a website and they've got a lot of a fair bit of traffic. Like, it makes, programmatic works. Slap some ads on there and start making money. If you're building a marketplace, if you're building a viewership and a followership, it's still a very good business, I think, overall. It just needs to, it's just maturing now, to come back to, sort of my earlier description. So if anything, I mean, what would really upset publishers, or what would really upset that balance of that ecosystem? And I think the only thing I can think of is that there is some judgment against Google that somehow splits up that big pot of demand that Google controls, right? If all of a sudden you had to somehow they split up AdX or Ad Exchange, all of a sudden the programmatic market becomes very confusing and problematic. So
Yes, would you like to add something about what may change the market in a more fundamental way from your perspective? It's a tricky question.
Yeah, it's a tricky question too. I mean, the one part we didn't really cover yet is the entire retail space, which I think is also a kind of a big part of where this entire industry can still grow a lot, and where it is growing a lot, where retail companies selling products, e-commerce shops and otherwise are extending their offering with advertisements, allowing brands to promote their products and otherwise, which in some cases is happening just within their own markets. In other cases, we are probably going to see it expand, and there being more of a global marketplace for it. And the kind of advantage of that market to some degree is that it has a better starting point to be clean. Because now we have these kind of e-commerce shops that are actually then selling the product, shipping them, handling the payments and otherwise, being pretty much a trustworthy source of information towards advertisers. So they are basically directly tied to each other. So there's even the possibility for authentication and otherwise uniquely identifying those users, because they are part of an e-commerce shop and they need to leave the data behind in order to be able to receive the products. So of course, privacy is still a topic, but there is more opportunity in terms of finding a middle way between authenticating that kind of traffic, making sure it's real, but in the end, having the easy possibility to trace it back to actual purchases happening and otherwise. Yeah.
I do have a question for both of you, and it's, do you think that it will gain advantage over services like AdX when it comes to shutting down the cookies, just because they're utilizing better user ID modules as compared to whatever Google is trying to do on their end in the end?
When we look at the user ID modules that are around so far, and exclude the ones that are email-based, I have yet to see them actually generate a significant uplift that makes a difference for any kind of publisher. All of the tests we have been running and where we have seen the data of testing those different ID providers, it has not been producing any kind of uplift. In some cases, even caused more damage than uplift from big libraries cluttering the website. And there are only a very few small exceptions from that, where it's actually making a difference. But then also the entire ID world is, and there's so many solutions out there now, there's not really one kind of unified one where everyone stands behind. I do think that the open one from Prebit has a good chance from being way more independent than all the other ones. Yeah, it's gonna be tough to see how it all goes, especially since these kind of solutions are not so much more privacy friendly than the cookies have been.
Yeah, I do get to that point really. James, any final? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I guess I would just say, if you're looking at this conversation and saying, where do I take my business? I do think that, authenticated traffic, which works very well with retail. To Nils' conversation earlier, right? Like authenticated traffic does look to me like a winner long term. If you have a strong relationship with your readers or your viewership or your consumers, if you have a trusted relationship where they log into your site, where you collect in a transparent way, email information and allow them to target you on their site, but also others. But within a trusted group, I think that does have a lot of value. I think buyers will pay a premium for that going forward.
In this regard, do you think we will see like an increase of retail companies buying publishing properties within their specific niche markets to expand their reach for advertisements?
I don't know. Are there, the question there is like, I think retailers are smart enough to know that they shouldn't be doing this business. Maybe they're not. Look at Walmart. Walmart has like a really big ads shop, right? Like they do a pretty good job of it from what I understand. I've talked to a few people there, but let's say we look at Target have its own like ad shop that it buys, or let's not. Amazon is excluded from this conversation, right? So
probably the question is whether mobile.de should buy Outbuild as an example and start running a water ads in there because it's easier for them to reach the wide auditory.
Yeah, it's more like for the niche market, or we have like a bike shop and them buying a bunch of like publications within that kind of market to gather those people around. If they already got to the point where they can monetize well with advertisements within their shop, then be able to link it to the audience of their publication, being able to grow this kind of market, most likely being able to completely outperform whatever this publisher was making before from this kind of direct relationship, not only being able to make money from those advertisements, but then also from purchases that go back to the shop.
Nils is probably gonna seek royalties on this idea as well.
He should. I think that's, again, in your niche markets, I think that makes a lot of sense. Maybe, I think there's, if you've got a drone business, you should probably own 2 or 3 drone websites and be trying to manage that whole marketplace as best you can and play it.
Yeah. Or if you look at something like Cafe Media with all of those kind of blogs, wouldn't it make some sense for some retail company in this space to potentially acquire Cafe Media to get all of this reach?
Could be. There could be a brick and mortar company that would think that would be useful. Do
you think it's time for us to close down this conversation? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's been nice talking to you too. So Nils Lind, the CEO of Assertive Yield, James Jackson, an industry professional with experience from Cursed, Twitter, Enthusiast Gaming, and now Assertive Yield as well. And myself, Stanislav, I'm part of Assertive Yield team, and I've mentioned the company way too many times for you to not wonder what it is. It's a data company, and we are actually in a really good position in the market because we are working with lots of different publishers, and we understand their data, we understand their problems, and we understand the issues they're facing. That's why we decided to make this video where we go over the trends that are happening, because from us working with a lot of different types of businesses out there, we have a good overview over that. There has been some interesting topics we've covered, from AI to the green change that is happening out there, to cookies, to Google and Programmatic, and we've talked about private SSPs, data analytics, cookies, etc. And I hope you like that, and I wish you a good day. James, good day. Nils.
Thank you, Stan.
See you, Stan. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Hello.